One thing that I really noticed as we've been traveling around Uganda to various villages and communities is that music plays a central role in daily life here in a way that probably you could say isn't always the case, where we're from in America, that music is a central thing that brings people together. And one of the most beautiful things that I've seen is that it's not limited by age group. And a lot of times we see certain musical genres speaking to different age groups, which is still the case, but in a real way, traditional music brings the entire spectrum of generations together, which I found so inspiring. And that's happening in a very natural way, that as the musicians come together, young people are always there. They're hearing it, they're dancing to it, they're participating in it, they're engaging within the music making. And so it ends up becoming this very natural way of bringing the people of the community together, as well as intergenerationally making connections. One of the things I really noticed traveling around Uganda is that in every community, the music that's being made, not only is everybody participating in one way or another, or open to participating with it, but I also noticed that where a lot of the times I think of musicians coming together to make music, we each have a specialty. And in some ways you see that, but in a lot of ways, every musician is either playing an instrument or singing, most often both, which I'm terrible at. I mean, I was so impressed that that's happening, as well as engaging their body through movement and dance, that it's not a specialized endeavor, that all of these things come together in a very natural way for the people gathered and making the music together. So music, singing, instrumental playing, and dance all coming together, not just with individuals, but with each person. Is just a little snippet that really warmed my heart and inspired me in a way. I'm almost getting emotional just thinking about it right now. And this was in a village where we heard the thumb piano, the akago being played, the thumb piano. After a beautiful performance, we kind of took a break, and then the whole community, we came together and we got to share a meal together. Now, one of the members of the ensemble, akago ensemble, who was playing shaker really excellently, was the oldest man in the community, and he was blind. And one thing I noticed all of a sudden was when it was time to eat, I saw him sitting there, and I saw a young boy who couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old, sitting right next to him, who had brought food over to the man, and they were sharing food from the same bowl. And then 20 minutes later, we were changing to a different location so they could perform some more. And the little boy was leading the man to his next position. And to see probably one of the youngest members of the community and one of the oldest members of the community together working in this harmony, and to me just was a great illustration of the community and this way that they're really working together and helping each other out. There's such a beautiful connection, again, between the generations that I found just really inspiring, and something that I want to bring home to America as well. And what a beautiful way to live. it's so amazing for me. It's like a dream come true. Getting to experience these various musical traditions, drumming traditions that have been just spectacular, with the power coming from the drumming, the interlocking rhythms that accompany dance, and that's we talk about groove, within rhythmic music. That the tight grooves that I've heard here are just inspiring. And so I'll give a couple examples, somewhat related. Probably two of the things I've been most fascinated by are the xylophone traditions that we've gotten to see. One from a Busoga village, one from the Ndara. And both are pit-dug xylophones. In other words, the resonating chamber, instead of being made out of a box of wood or aluminum tubes like we use for marimbas and stuff, it was literally a hole dug in the ground specific for that purpose. And then the bars are laid over that pit, and the pit forms a resonating chamber to really amplify the bars. And they're loud. It's really loud, and a whole spectrum of sound over 6 octaves that's being played by multiple players across from one another. But the complexity and nature of interlocking rhythms is amazing, and you can hear it and just be, wow, that's hard. I know, because I've tried things like that, and it takes a lot of practice, and they're so tight it sounds like one player. And of course we had the opportunity to get to sit in and play, and yeah, it is hard. I've been playing for a while, and I was really struggling and really listening and really focusing, and the majority of the time I would say I was failing, and then sometimes I'd have some moderate success once in a while, but then I get a little bit off groove, and I'd kind of get the look, and I know the look because I've given a lot of people the look, like, you're not locked in. So I found it humbling and inspiring that there's a complexity of rhythm here that I knew existed here, but to get to see it, feel it, experience it firsthand has been something I'll never forget. I felt that it took time, any place that we've gone, and this makes sense, that the ice had to be broken, right? There's not a lot of ice around here in Uganda, but the ice had to be broken because we're bringing people with oftentimes a language barrier, cultural differences. We're coming together all of a sudden. But the beautiful thing I saw happen each time was that through the music making and through the connection, in particular, it was one thing getting to observe and for us getting to perform and them observe, but the pivotal moment I felt in each experience was when we started sharing and making music together. When we started, doing our best to dance, which was an interesting thing, and heard a lot of laughs, which were warranted, and us trying to get to play some of the instruments for this exchange of knowledge, this exchange of culture, this exchange of food, which is so important in sharing and coming together. This Pamoja, right? That through that experience, I always found a pivot that would happen, where all of a sudden we've become friends, we've become closer to one another. We've really started to share aspects of our culture in a way that has made the world a better and a smaller place, in a way, a place that's warmer and a place that's more connected. And I thought that is inspiring for me to continue to bring on and see that is through this educational process in a lot of ways, in one way or another, formally or informally, that we can really connect with people and share what we have and receive what they have, and grow closer together through that process. For one, I guess the importance of music within the culture is it's vital. It's vital. And we know this as musicians ourselves and music educators, but in a real way that we don't always get to see every day in our own culture. I think that music is important to each person. One of the men I was talking to, as music was going on, he started dancing, and he came over to me and he said, "Music is dance." there's this connection, right? It's almost like the two are one, and that's such a vital part of life. I saw this connection that perhaps in our own music making and tradition, where so many of our instruments, you're a vocalist, of course, so you carry your instrument with you everywhere you go. But for the rest of instrumentalists, we purchase oftentimes things that are manufactured, and there's a lot of separation between our daily life and our existence within the area where we are and the instruments that we're using. But here, in talking about the instruments, I'll go back to the xylophones. The Uganda xylophone, for example, is made out of acacia wood. The bars can last for up to 100 years if they're stored right, and the instrument can keep being enjoyed. But they take a lot of pride, and they're very picky about the sound of the wood, the tuning of the wood, and how it sounds, how it's played, how much weight you need to put into to get the instrument to sound. But all of that is really location-based. That wood is growing right out here, whereas the wood of the instrument I play is growing in a rainforest in South America, a long ways away. I don't even know what the trees look like. I know what good sound is, but we want the same thing, because I'm picky about the sound I get on my instruments as well. But there's something so tangible, I think, here about the instruments that are played, that you can see those materials, you experience those materials on a daily basis. And I think that brings something special in the way that music ties back to daily life. Through this process of exchange of knowledge and teaching and learning process, there's different ways to do it, and as educators, I think we think about this a lot, we experience this a lot, we experiment with this a lot with our own students. Our own students oftentimes are kind of the guinea pigs, right? And I want to try this out, and we're going to see how it goes, and is this a more effective way for this group of students, or for this particular student to get across an idea? So I think there's many ways to do that. I think in the West we have a system of doing that, a way of approaching that in a way that we deviate from sometimes, and stuff but it's somewhat more ingrained. And here there's a more experiential approach to teaching and learning, that little children are experiencing music their entire lives. They're taking part in it. They're singing with it, they're clapping with it. There's not a barrier between the musician and the people listening. And there's less of a barrier between the teacher and the student, right? So we draw those lines very, very clearly in our own musical traditions, cultural traditions. And here there's a lot more give and take. And the beauty of that, I think, really comes in that the music becomes so much more ingrained and connects the people so much. So, as a Westerner, that's difficult it was difficult for me learning some of the things that I was learning, especially going back with the xylophones. I was stumped for a while, and it was tough, and it wasn't like the teaching process wasn't one where we can just say, okay, stop, let's slow it down, let's talk about it, can we think about it? That's not the approach here, right? The approach is we're going to keep doing this, right. And you'll get it eventually. And I did eventually. I think I'm a slow learner, though. But it's a way of teaching that is very natural with communities where so many people are taking part of the music. You can't just stop and explain everything. The music is happening, and you're going to learn it. It will happen. So I think to me that was something humbling and a wonderful takeaway that I'll bring back with me to my students. The other thing I would say is there are certain universals that in music education. And one of the questions I asked one of the xylophone groups that were here is, how do you practice together? How does this work? Because they have to set up, it's not like each one has an instrument in their home that they can practice on, right? They set this up. It's very much a communal thing. Well, they said, we get together at least 2 times a week, and our practice sessions generally go up to 5 hours long. That's a long time. It requires endurance, focus. But when you're playing a musical groove a melody, something that long with other people and having to listen, adjust, and you reach a level of groove that most of us don't experience in the West. And it takes time, it takes repetition, and any good musician knows this in any musical tradition, right? We have to practice a lot, we have to repeat things a lot. But I thought that was another good takeaway, that we need to sit with anything that we're trying to do musically for a long time. They do that and they play like one. And that was a good thing I want to bring back to my students.